guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today, and today we're doing a little follow-up video on this Colt Trooper MK3 in 4-inch. And if you've watched the prior videos on this, you see next to it, it's 1 year older brother Colt Trooper MK3. This one is in 6 inches, and per our last video on this guy right here, we took it out and shot, found it to be a nice accurate shooter, functioned perfectly in single action, and double action had light primer strikes, and it's got a very light trigger on this, and compared to this one, you can feel the difference. And I was at a gun show yesterday, which, by the way, I was able to pick up this nice little basket weave holster that fits 4-inch Smiths as well as this Colt Trooper beautifully for 15 bucks. So sometimes that's the best stuff you get out of a gun show. But anyway, I handled a number of Colt Trooper Mark IIIs and found them all to have a much stiffer trigger pull than this. So I got to thinking, I've got a couple different springs on order from Wolf, and those are a 13 and a 16 pound. 16 pound is the factory. My guess is what happened on this one is someone either cut down the existing spring or they put in an 11 pound, to make this a real super slick hair trigger. And that's certainly not what I want, especially when it gives you light primer strikes. So we're hoping that's what's going on. And so today, while I'm waiting for stuff to get shipped, I'm thinking, hey, these have the exact same assemblies when it comes to the trigger. Why not swap them out in terms of not the trigger itself, but just the mainspring and the plunger that works with that. It should be interchangeable. So we're going to give that a try just to verify whether or not we've got an issue. So stay tuned. Okay, so the part that I'm going to switch out, which is the hammer spring and the housing for it, is this part right here. And as you can see, this is an identical part on both of these models. They both have the exact same frames with different barrels. But there wasn't a model change or anything else. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to just swap these out. And in theory, it should stand to reason that the one that works, the gun that works fine in double action, if the issue is that spring, by simply swapping it out with this one, this should now perform reliably in double action. And then it's just a matter of when I get my new springs from Wolf, okay, which ones do I prefer, this much or heavier. Now, someone might have gone in and worked on this sear or done any number of things in addition to lightening up the spring, and so it's not necessarily going to stand to reason that all I do is swap these out and that proves or disproves my theory. But I figure it's an inexpensive way to start. So I left the right side stocks on here so I could show you guys an illustration of what we're doing here, but obviously we're going to take them off when I work with it. Thanks to mass production and interchangeable parts, which these guns were about, as a more economical, law enforcement, budget-friendly alternative to the Python, this should be no problem. Now, I've got to capture the spring, so I've developed a high-end tool. Basically what we're doing is we're putting tension on this spring. We can get that paper clip in there, and now I release it. I get to stop speculation and see clearly that the 6-inch Mark III hammer spring is indeed a stiffer spring than what was in the 4-inch. and that's going to explain perhaps why one of them was something that we were able to successfully use in double action and the other one was not. So here in this case we're able to see that. So I imagine they offer a 11-pound spring. I imagine that it's even shorter than this one. My suspicion is if this is the factory spring here at 16 pounds, this might be the 13-pound spring, but we don't know. We'll find out when we get those, and somebody might have just cut it. So we're going to go ahead and install this spring into the 4-inch MK3. We're going to go try to shoot it today in double action and see if that proves out my point. And if it does, then all we need to do is put a new spring in either in this or just go ahead and reinstall with a new spring in the 6-inch. I thought the first thing I'd do is take the 6-inch Colt Trooper that I put the lighter spring in and see how that functioned. I think you're going to see right now that it doesn't function at all in double action. I think I got 1 out of 6 to fire. So that part of the theory has proven itself out. Now the question is what does it do when we try the 4-inch that has the stiffer spring? Does that solve our problem? Because we didn't have a problem with the 6-inch. So it'll be interesting to see. Here I'm just shooting in single action. Well, I guess that answers my question about the spring and interchanging from the 6-inch. Let's see what happens with the 4. Now we're going to go ahead and use the 4-inch with the stiffer hammer spring and see what happens. So far so good. 3 out of 3, 4 out of 4, 5 out of 5, 6 out of 6. We never got that before. What we're going to see here is a lot of consistent shooting, and of course what I like the ability to do is be able to shoot that 100%. What you're going to see here is my one and only light primer strike, or I should say failure to fire, using the hammer spring today, and that was using Fiocchi. It was purchased at the range, and that was it. It fired everything else perfectly, 38 specials as well as 357 Magnum by MagTech, and all the rest of the Fiocchi. So I think it was an ammo outlier in this particular case and not a function of the firearm, but just to make sure, you're going to see me fire a heck of a lot of subsequent rounds, and because I wanted to walk away feeling like I'd solved that problem, without a doubt. Well, I'm a man that loves it when a plan comes together, so you can imagine how thrilled I am to have this guy right here performing the way it's supposed to in single and double action. I love the way this thing shoots. It's a sweet little 4-inch 357 Magnum. I'm not going to say that it's a better shooter than my Smith 586, but it's got a little bit of a different feel. It somehow, even though it's a similar weight firearm, it does have a little bit of a smoother shooting kind of scenario in terms of the way that the recoil is distributed to your hand and so forth. So, you know, is it a better firearm? I don't know. It's a different firearm, and I certainly wouldn't feel bad about carrying this guy around in a holster or as some kind of sidearm, or even you know, depending on wintertime kind of conditions, as a concealed carry kind of scenario. But very pleased that for the low cost of about $4.58 in springs is what'll end up costing me once I get them in from from Wolf, you know, I will have fixed a problem that could have been a lot more expensive, or it could have been a lot of things. Could have been the sear, could have been the hammer, so forth and so on. And it wasn't. It was a spring, and I'll be interested in seeing once the new springs come in, how those compare to the two we were looking at earlier. Did either of them have the original factory spring, which runs about 16 and a half pounds? Was the shorter spring that was originally in this one, was that a 13 pound or was that an 11 pound? We'll be able to determine that when we get the 13 and the 16 pound in from Wolf. Either way, given how easy it is to replace these springs, once I determine the proper spring, I'm going to go ahead and replace with new in both of them, just because it's so easy to do. But was glad that I had the thought to just say, look, let's just swap out the springs from the gun that works in double action for the one that doesn't. And surprise, surprise, sometimes it's a simple solution. And we find out now that my 6-inch with the former 4-inch MK3 spring is not functioning properly in double action, and so obviously we're going to remedy that probably here later this week or so when we get our springs in from Wolf. So always glad when that works out. This is Dr. Drake 63. I appreciate you watching. Obviously you got to be a little bit of a gun nerd to watch some of these videos where I get into detail on a repair or fixing an old 22 or whatever the case may be, but I'm happy to show you success. I'm happy to show you when I don't have success, but we're certainly liking the success we had with this one. This is one heck of a nice firearm. I would definitely suggest to anybody who is a fan of the Combat Magnum size 357, if you can get a hold of one of these in decent working shape, you should get one. I think you'd enjoy it immensely. This is Dr. Drake 63 saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you on down the road. Thanks, Colt.